Erev Tov, everyone, and welcome to the House of Seven Beggars. There, that's better. It is Wednesday night, just shortly before the new day of Lag BaOmer. This is the House of Seven Beggars, and therefore it must be the Torah study with Rabbi A and Reb Reuven, who we hope will be joining us. Hopefully, he is not in the hospital again. Um, so, we're going to take a departure tonight from our study of the Torah and Rashi's commentary. And with Lag BaOmer starting here shortly, we're going to do a little something special for Lag BaOmer. Now, I'm sure most of you already know that. Well, before we get into that, let's see who we have in the chat room. We have David Brown, Nora Holtzinger. Good to see you, Nora. Marshall Reese, Rabbi Shlomo Nachman, and Shoshi Rangels. And I'm sure Shlomo is there with her. Okay, so what we're going to do tonight, we all know about Lag BaOmer. And if you don't know about Lag BaOmer, I encourage you to watch earlier today. Rabbi Shlomo Nachman actually did a broadcast which explained the significance of Lag BaOmer, why we do certain things, the bonfires, and so on and so forth. And we do this every year, and there's a lot of websites out there that are talking about, Lag BaOmer and the bonfires that are going on and everything like that right now, and so on and so forth. We know about the plague that devastated the students of Rabbi Akiva, the 26,000 students that who died in the plague, which ended on Lag BaOmer, and so on and so forth. As I said, if you want to get the details on that, go see Rabbi Shlomo Nachman's video of that. It will explain it. It very well explains it. But I thought tonight what we would do is we would concentrate on Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Bar Yochai. Who is Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai? Because we know, we know he passed away on Lag BaOmer, that he said it was the day of his greatest joy, that there was a holy fire that surrounded him during the period of his passing, and so on and so forth. We know that, and we've heard it year after year. But actually, who was Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai? So we're going to do, first of all, we're going to get a little bit of historical background on Rabbi from an article from Chabad by Nissan Mendel. It's a very good historical perspective. Then, after we do that, we are going to go into the Sefer HaAgadah, and we are going to look at what it says about Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai in the Talmud and Midrash and some of the Agidah. Okay, so let's see who else. We got a lot of people in here tonight. So we've got Rabbi Shlomo. If you would be so kind to put a link in here to your broadcast on Lag BaOmer that you did this afternoon, greatly appreciate it. Guy has joined us, and let's see, Cat Belcher Brown and Miles. So good to have you all here, and I know there are probably more who will be sneaking in. I'll try to keep up with it, but sometimes I just kind of forget and don't catch up until later. So let us begin, since we will not be doing the bracha for the study of Torah because we are not actually studying Torah tonight. So let's just say that we hope that may Hashem open our eyes and our ears to the lessons that are in the information that we are going to share tonight. Okay, so let us start out with the every year on Lag BaOmer, which happens on the 18th of Iyar, which will start at sundown tonight. And we remember the great and holy Tana, the Mishnaic sage, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, who died on this day about 18 centuries ago. To this day, pious Jews make an annual pilgrimage to Kfar Miron in Eretz Israel to pray at the tomb of this great and holy scholar. Okay, so let's get into this student when he was a student. He was a student of Rabbi Akiva, one of our great sages. When Shimon was a young boy, he studied in the great academy of the scholars of Yavne, founded by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who died just about the time that Shimon was born. Shimon's principal teacher was the famous Rabbi Akiva, who had his academy at Bnei Brak. So attached did Shimon become to his master, Rabbi Akiva, that Rabbi Akiva called him my son. During the cruel persecution by the Roman Emperor Hadrian, when the Talmudic academies were shut down and the study of Talmud was forbidden on penalty of death, Rabbi Akiva continued to teach the Talmud publicly, and his devoted student Shimon stayed at his side until Rabbi Akiva was arrested. Even then, Shimon continued to visit his master in prison to receive instruction there. Only death finally separated Rabbi Akiva, for Rabbi Akiva was condemned to die a martyr's death. Basically, he had the flesh flayed from his body in a Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of Hashem's name. And there's that very famous story about Rabbi Akiva when his students, primarily Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, said during this period when he was having the flesh flayed from his body, and he said that he told his students that he finally understood what it said. We say it in the Shema twice a day, and he said it was only now that he understood what it meant by to love Hashem with one's whole being. Okay. So, those were very difficult times for Jewish people in the land of Israel under the brutal persecution of the Roman Emperor Hadrian. It was particularly difficult for the sages to study Talmud and to conduct schools. Penalty of death, right? It was also forbidden to ordain students of Talmud. Both the ordaining sage and the ordained scholar were put to death if caught. The entire Jewish religious life was in danger until the great Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba publicly ordained 5 famous scholars defying Hadrian's cruel decree. Rabbi Shimon was one of these 5 scholars. Rabbi Meir, the famous Rabbi Meir, which we read about all the time in the Talmud, was one of these. The Roman authorities were soon after these dauntless Jewish champions. The ordained scholars escaped but Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba was caught and put to death. Finally, the cruel Hadrian died in great pain, and his decrees were no longer enforced with the same brutality as before. I mean, they stood, but they were kind of ignored to the largest portion. The leading sages of the time gathered to consider ways and means of restoring Jewish life. Among these leading sages gathered was Ushah. We find Rabbi Shimon again. For reasons of safety, the sages moved to Yavne, where they sat in conference in a vineyard. The leading sages were Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, the Galileite, and Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Bar Yochai. I keep saying ben Yochai, it's Bar Yochai. Discussing the what attitude to take toward the Roman government. Rabbi Yehuda suggested a friendly one. Rabbi Yosef expressed no opinion, and Rabbi Shimon spoke very bitterly of the Roman tyrants and advocated every possible defiance. For Rabbi Shimon could never forget the terrible sight of his beloved master and teacher, Rabbi Akiva, being tortured to death by the Roman executioners. The sages were not aware that their conversation was ordained or was overheard by a certain young man, Yehuda ben Gerim, one-time disciple of Rabbi Shimon. Yehuda ben Gerim later turned spy for the Roman authorities. Very similar to the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. This treacherous man reported the conversation of the sages to the Roman authority. At once they decreed honor and rank for Rabbi Yehuda for speaking favorably of them, exiled Rabbi Yosef for failing to do so, and death for Rabbi Shimon, who dared challenge them. Rabbi Shimon fled for his life together with his son Rabbi Elazar, and for a time they stayed hiding in Beit Hamidrash, in the Beit Hamidrash, the academy, where Rabbi Shimon's wife brought them bread and water daily. When the search was intensified, they decided to seek a better hiding place. Without telling anyone of their whereabouts, they hid in a cave. God caused a carob tree to spring up and at the entrance of the cave, as well as a spring of fresh water. Now, the carob tree was for two purposes. Number one, to disguise the entrance of the cave. Number two, to provide food for Rabbi Shimon and his son Elazar. For 12 years, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and his son Elazar dwelt in the cave, sustaining themselves on carob and water. During the time, they studied and prayed until they became the holiest sages of their day. At the end of the 12 years, the prophet Eliyahu brought them good tidings, a change of government, and a reprieve. Father and son now left the cave. Passing the field where they saw Jewish farmers toiling on the land, they said, "Imagine people giving up the sacred study of the Torah for worldly matters." No sooner did they utter these words than all the produce in the field went up in smoke. Then they heard the heavenly voice saying, "Have you come out to destroy my world? Go back to your cave." They returned to the cave, for another 12 months and left it again only after they heard the same heavenly voice calling them to leave. This time they came out with a different outlook on life. Seeing a Jew carrying 2 bunches of myrtle rushing home on Friday afternoon, they asked him what he was going to do with the myrtle. "It is to adorn my house in honor of the Sabbath," the man replied. "Would not 1 bunch of myrtle be sufficient to fill your house with fragrance?" they asked. The stranger replied, "I am taking 2 bunches, one for remember the Sabbath day, and the other for keep the Sabbath day holy." Rabbi Shimon said to his son, "See how precious these precepts are to our brethren." Quite a difference between the first time and the second time. Satisfied that despite all the decrees and persecutions of the cruel Roman rulers, the Jews still clung to the commandments and especially Shabbat observance, Rabbi Shimon and his son felt greatly encouraged. Proceeding on their way, they met Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, famous, speaking of Yair, Yair's birthday is today. Okay. Oh, Richard is here. Oh, good to see you, Richard. Okay. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, another famous scholar about whom there are many wondrous tales in the Talmud. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was Rabbi Shimon's father-in-law, and he came out to meet his in-laws. Seeing the terrible effects of the prolonged cave life upon the health of his son-in-law, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair burst into tears, but Rabbi Shimon consoled him, saying that he could never have attained such a high degree of scholarship and divine wisdom had he not spent so many years in the cave. Rabbi Shimon settled in the town of Tekoa, where he formed a great academy. The greatest scholars of the time gathered there to receive instruction from Rabbi Shimon. Among them was Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, which again we read about in the Talmud all the time. And actually, we read about him every day at the Mincha, especially at Mincha on Shabbat, where we talk about the spices and the sacrifices. Anyway, so Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, the Nasi, later the compiler of the Mishnah. One day, Rabbi Shimon met Yehuda ben Gerim. Remember this guy? The treacherous spy who had caused him so much trouble. Rabbi Shimon exclaimed, "Is this man still alive?" And soon afterwards, Yehuda ben Gerim died. Once again, religious persecution increased. The Romans prohibited Shabbat observance and other important Jewish laws. The sages decided to send a delegation to Rome and chose Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai to head the delegation. When they came to Rome, they heard the daughter of the Roman emperor had lost her mind and that no one could cure her. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai proceeded to the palace and asked for permission to treat the patient. After a few days treatment, the princess became well. In gratitude, the emperor told Rabbi Shimon that he could choose the most precious thing in his treasury. Rabbi Shimon found there the original decrees of persecution that caused them and claimed them as his reward. And he succeeded in bringing great salvation to the people. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was one of the greatest teachers of Jewish life and Jewish law and ethics. not to mention the Kabbalistic traditions, because it said because of this that the Kabbalistic knowledge was given to him, and he was actually wrote down the Sefer Yetzirah. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai was one of the greatest teachers of Jewish law and ethics. His many sayings and laws in the Talmud reflect his holiness of character and devotion to Torah. Once he said, "If I were present at the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai, I would have demanded 2 months, one for continuous study of the words of the Torah, and the other one for eating." But then he admitted that this would not be very wise, since now, since even now, when man has no more than one mouth, he says so many wrongs. How much more so if he had two? Even though he lived a life of a recluse for many years, Rabbi Shimon knew the importance of good human relationships. He said, "Man should rather jump into a fiery furnace than offend another in public. To deceive anyone by words is worse than cheating them out of money. He who lets arrogance get the better of him is like a heathen worshiping idols." In the Ethics of Our Fathers, Pirkei Avot, we find his sayings, "There are 3 crowns, the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. But the crown of a good name exceeds them all." Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is the author of the sacred Zohar, brilliance, containing mystic interpretations of the Torah, and chief source of Kabbalah. For many generations, the holy teachings of the Holy Zohar were studied by few select students and scholars, until the great scholar Rabbi Moshe ben Shem Tov de Leon published the Zohar about 700 years ago. Rabbi Shimon is also the author of Sefri and Michelet of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai died in Meron, a village near Safed, in the land of Israel. As we mentioned before, many Jews make an annual pilgrimage to his grave on the 18th of Iyar, which is Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer, the day he died, where they light candles and bonfires, huge bonfires, and pray at his grave. Okay, so that gives us the historical perspective of the time when the rabbi was around. Let's get a little more insight from the rabbi, from the Sefer HaAgadah. So we have Rabbi Shimon. Now they say Ben Yochai in the Haggadah, but Shimon bar Yochai, and they give his life as circa 130 to 60, the current era, and his son Rabbi Elazar, from the 2nd century CE. Evidently, we don't know exactly the dates. So if you have the Sefer Agadah, we are on page 249. And this is going to be the section starting at 217. So, Rabbi Abba said, formerly, each master used to ordain his own pupils. Thus, Rabban Yochai ben Zakkai ordained Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Yehoshua ordained Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva ordained Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon. But when Rabbi Akiva added, "Let Rabbi Meir sit in the first place," Rabbi Shimon's face turned pale. Remember, he was called my son. At this, Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Shimon, "Let it be sufficient let it suffice you that I and your Creator recognize your intellectual strengths." Okay, so we go on to 218. It is reported that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai used to say, "I see those who will behold the presence in the hereafter, and they are few. If there be 1,000, I and my son are among them. If 100, I and my son are among them. If only 2, I and my son are the ones." It is further reported that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai used to say, "The suffering and privation that have been mine would make it possible for me to exempt from judgment the entire world from the day I was born until now. Were my son Eliezer with me, we would exempt it from the day of the world was created until now. Were Yotam, son of Uzziah, with me, we could exempt it from the day the world was created until its end." 219. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said, Had I stood at Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, at the time when the Torah was given to Israel, I would have asked the Holy One that he create 2 mouths in a man, one to be occupied with Torah, and the other to serve all his other needs, eating, drinking, and so on. Then retracted his words. Rabbi Shimon said, "If when a man has only 1 mouth, the world can barely endure all the informing it does, how much less if he had 2? 220. Ishi ben Yehuda used to say, "Rabbi Shimon grinds much grain and weighs very little," which means, as so it is taught, he forgets little, and even what he forgets is only bran. Once Rabbi Shimon came upon Ishi ben Yehuda and asked him, "Why do you spout idle chatter before the sages?" Ishi replied, "Why should it bother you? I never said anything derogatory about you other than that you study much, forget little. And what you forgot is no more than bran of your learning." Rabbi Shimon used to say to his disciples, "Learn my rules, for my rules surpass the very best of Rabbi Akiva's rules." 221. On one occasion, while Rabbi Yehuda ben Yosef and Rabbi Shimon were sitting together, Yehuda, the son of proselytes, happened to sit with him. This is the Yehuda ben Gerim. Happened to be sitting with them. Rabbi Yehuda began the discussion and observed, "How noble are the works of this Roman nation! They laid out streets, they built bridges, they erected baths." Rabbi Yosef remained silent. But Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai spoke up and said, "All that they made to serve themselves. They laid out streets to settle harlots in them, baths to pamper themselves, bridges to levy tolls." Now, Yehuda ben Gerim went off and kept retelling the sages' words until they were heard by the Roman government, which decreed, "Yehuda acclaimed shall be acclaimed as spokesman for the Jews." One who said, "Well, look, they built bridges, they laid out streets," and so on and so forth. Yosef, who remained silent, shall be exiled to Separos. Shimon, who vilified, shall be put to death. As a result, Rabbi Shimon and his son hid out in the house of study, the Beit HaMidrash, where every day Rabbi Shimon's wife would bring them bread and a jug of water, with which they sustained themselves. But when insistence on carrying out the decree became intense, Rabbi Shimon said to his son, "Woman's resolution is frail. Your mother, put to the torture, may reveal the place where we are hiding." So, and this wasn't derogatory against his wife. He was being very practical, and he was being protective of his wife. So they went and hid in a cave. A miracle occurred. A carob tree and a well were created for them. They would remove their garments and sit up to their necks in sand and study the entire day. When it was time for prayer, they put on their garments, wrapped themselves in their prayer shawls, and prayed. Afterwards, they again removed their garments so that they would not wear them out. Quite a more information than we got from the Chabad piece, which is basically it's kind of summarizing things. They dwelt 12 years in the cave. Then the prophet Eliyahu Hanavi came and, standing at the entrance of the cave, announced, "Who will inform the son of Yochai that Caesar is dead and his decree annulled?" So they went out, and seeing people plowing and sowing, Rabbi Shimon exclaimed, "These men forsake eternal life and engage in life temporal. Wherever they cast their eyes upon was immediately incinerated." At that, a divine voice went forth and said, "Have you come out to destroy my world? Return to your cave." So they returned and remained there 12 months. Finally, they said, "Even the punishment of the wicked in Gehenna is no more than 12 months. A divine voice came forth and said, "Leave your cave." They went out and sat down at the entrance of the cave, where they saw a trapper attempting to catch birds by spreading his net. When Rabbi Shimon heard a divine voice say, "Mercy, mercy," the bird escaped And when he heard the voice say, "Death," the bird was trapped and stayed caught. At this, Rabbi Shimon declared, "Without the will of heaven, even a bird may not be trapped. All the less so a human being." And they left the cave for good. Wherever Rabbi Elazar bruised anyone's feelings, Rabbi Shimon would heal them, saying, "My son, it is enough for the world if only you and I occupy ourselves with Torah." On the Sabbath eve, as it was getting dark, they saw an old man running in the twilight with 2 bunches of myrtles in his hands. When they asked him, "Where are you? What are these for?" he replied, "They are in honor of the Sabbath. But 1 bundle should be enough. One is for remember," which is Exodus 28, "and the other is for observe," from Deuteronomy 5:12. Said Rabbi Shimon to his son, "See how precious commandments are to Israel." Then their minds were put at ease. When Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, Rabbi Shimon's son-in-law, heard that now we had heard that he was his father-in-law in the, it was probably just an oversight. Shimon's son-in-law heard that Rabbi Shimon had left the cave. He went out to meet him and immediately took him to the baths in Tiberias, lovely place, where they began to massage him. Seeing the abrasions in his skin caused by the sand, Rabbi Pinchas burst into weeping, his tears falling on Rabbi Shimon's body, so that Rabbi Shimon cried out in pain. Rabbi Pinchas lamented, "Woe is me that I see you in such a state." Rabbi Shimon replied, "Happy are you that you see me thus. Had you not seen me thus, you would not have found as much learning as in me." Rabbi Shimon said to himself, "Since a miracle has been wrought for me, I will go and rectify that which requires rectification." So he asked Rabbi Pinchas, "Is there anything that requires rectifying?" "Rabbi Pinchas, there is a place here suspected of being unclean, so that priests who have to make a detour around it are distressed." Rabbi Shimon, does anyone know whether at any time in the past this place was believed to be clean? A certain old man replied, "Here Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was a priest, cut down lupins for the heave offering, the terumah. So Rabbi Shimon too declared it clean, where the ground was hard and showed no trace of having been dug into to make a grave. He declared it clean, and where it was loose, he marked it as a grave site. Later, the old man remarked derisively, "The son of Yochai has declared a whole cemetery clean." Rabbi Shimon responded, "If you had not been with us at the time, or even if you had been with us but did not vote with us, you might properly have made such a remark. But since you were with us and actually voted with us, you should not subsequently criticize my decision. For people ought to be able to say, If whores are willing to paint one another, certainly disciples of the wise should do the same and more. Then Rabbi Shimon thrust such a look at the old man that the man died. An ignorant Kohen saw what Rabbi Shimon was doing, and he said, "Shall I not go and make sport of these elder Jew of this elder of the Jews?" So he got hold of a corpse and buried it in a thoroughfare that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai had purified that morning. The Kohen then went to him and said, "Did you not cleanse such and such a thoroughfare?" He replied, "Yes." The Kohen said, "Suppose I produce a corpse for you from that very place." Rabbi Shimon, "Produce it." The Kohen did so. And Rabbi Shimon, having perceived by the power of the Holy Spirit that the Kohen had placed it there, declared, "I decree that he who is above ground shall die and be put underground, and that he who was underground shall be revived and raised above ground." And it came to pass. When Rabbi Shimon went out into the street and saw Yehuda, the son of proselytes, Yehuda ben Gerim, he exclaimed, "That man is still in the world?" He cast his eyes upon him, and he was turned into a heap of bones. And I had heard a heap of dung in other translations and stuff, but a heap of bones, whichever. Okay, let's see. Kelsey Lynn has joined us. I want to make sure that we get everybody here. Okay, so we are at our halfway point, and we still got plenty more to read about Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Like I said, very little do we know about the story on the Lag BaOmer and all that stuff. It's only a very, very small portion of the man Shimon bar Yochai. And I think this is a good way to get a little bit of a feel for who the man actually was and what a holy man he actually was. Okay, so we are going to take our 6-minute break now. And when we return, we will pick up where we left off. I hope everybody will stay tuned, and we will see you in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies. Everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
Okay, let's stop that one right there. And let's get this thing reordered here. Okay, so we are back. Okay, I forgot to switch the videos. I do that a lot. Anyway, so there we go. Okay, keep forgetting about this 12-second delay. So we're continuing studying about the man Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, and we're reading from the Sefer HaAgadah, which is stories from the Mishnah and the Talmud. Okay, so let's continue on and find out a little more about Rabbi Shimon. Okay, so the Roman government once issued a decree that Jews should not keep the Sabbath nor circumcise their children. Rabbi Reuven ben Istroboli trimmed the front of his hair in the Roman fashion. You know, that mole haircut. Went up and sat among the Romans and asked them, if a man has an enemy, what should he wish him to be, poor or rich? They replied, poor. He said to them, if so, let the Jews do not work on the Sabbath, so they may grow poor. They, right you are. When they went back and asked them again, if one had an enemy, what should he wish him to be, weak or healthy? They said, weak. He said to them, then let their children be circumcised when they are only 8 days old, and they will be weak. They then declared, right you are, and immediately annulled the decree. Later, however, when they realized he was a Jew, the decree was reinstituted. But a small victory is better than no victory at all, right? The Jews then said among themselves, who shall go to Rome to work for the annulment of the decree? Let Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, for whom miracles are frequently wrought, go. And who should accompany? Rabbi Eliezer, son of Rabbi Yosef. At this, Rabbi Eliezer's son, Rabbi Yosef, said to them, if my father, Halafatam, were still alive, would you say to him, surrender your son Yosef to be slain? Rabbi Shimon retorted sharply, if Yochai, my father, were still alive, would you have said to him, surrender your son Shimon to be slain? So Rabbi Yosef said to them, then I myself will go, for I fear that during the journey Rabbi Shimon may inflict punishment on my son. So Rabbi Shimon undertook to inflict no punishment on him. Nevertheless, in the event he did inflict it, for during their journey, the following question was put to them: how do we know that a reptile's blood is its flesh is also, a reptile's blood, like its flesh, is also unclean? Without waiting for Rabbi Shimon to reply, Rabbi Eliezer, son of Yosef, said in an undertone out of the side of his mouth, the blood's unclean, and this is derived from, and these are the items in reptiles that are unclean unto you, from Leviticus 11:29. Rabbi Shimon said to him with biting irony, from your way of speaking out of the side of your mouth, one can see that you are indeed some scholar. May such a son never return to his father. Then the demon, Ben Termalion, Leon, came to meet him, inquiring, do you wish me to accompany you? At these words, Rabbi Shimon burst into tears and said, Hagar, handmaiden of my ancestor's house, was found worthy of meeting an angel 3 times, while I had no such privilege, not even once. However, let a miracle be wrought, whether through an angel or through a demon. So Ben uh, Temalian went ahead to the palace and entered the body of Caesar's daughter, who kept calling for Rabbi Shimon. When Rabbi Shimon arrived at the palace and was asked to help her, he ordered, Ben Temalian, leave her. Ben Temalian left her. And as his name was called, Ben Temalian left her and went away. At that, Caesar said to Rabbi Shimon, ask for whatever you wish, then go into the treasury house and take whatever you desire. They went and found the documents of the decree, took it, and tore it to pieces. Okay. The story is told of a disciple of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai who left to go outside of the land and came back wealthy. When the other disciples saw him, they envied him and wished that they too might go abroad. Having learned of this, Rabbi Shimon brought all the disciples to a certain village near the village of Meron, where he began to pray. Valley, O valley, fill up with gold dinars. Immediately, before his very eyes, the valley began to give forth a stream of gold dinars. Then he said to his disciples, if it is gold that you want, here is your gold, take it. But you should know that he who takes it now is taking his share of the world to come, since the reward for study Torah is not in this world, but in the world to come. A story is told of a woman in Sidon who lived 10 years with her husband without bearing him a child. Deciding to part from each other, the two came to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, who said to them, by your lives, even as you were wed with food and drink, you should be separated with food and drink. They followed his advice and declared a festival day for themselves, prepared a great feast, during which the wife gave her husband too much to drink. Being thus put in a good humor, he said to her, my dear, pick any fine article you want in my home and take it with you to return to your father's house. Does this sound familiar? It should, because this was one of the stories that Zeta told earlier this week. What did she do? After he fell asleep, she beckoned her manservants and maidservants and said to them, pick him up with the couch, take him along and carry him to my father's house. At midnight, he woke up from his sleep. The effects of the wine had left him, and he asked, my dear, where am I? She replied, you are in my father's house. He, but what am I doing in your father's house? She, did you not say to me last night, pick any fine article that you like from my house and take it with you when you return to your father's house? There is no finer article in the world I care for more than for you. They again went to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and he arose and prayed for them, and they were remembered by God and granted children. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan ben Achmed And Rabbi Yehuda, the son of the Rabbi Yehuda ben Gerim, studied the passage on vows at the school of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. They had taken leave of him in the evening, but in the morning they came back and took leave of him again. When he asked, "But did you not take leave of me last night?" They replied, "Our master, you taught us that a disciple who took leave of his master and then remained to lodge overnight in the city is required to take leave of him once again." At this, Rabbi Shimon said to his son, "These men are of consequence. Go along with them, and they may bless you." So the son went with them. When they asked him, "What do you wish?" he replied, "My father told me, go along with them, that they may bless you." They said to him, "May it be heaven's will that you sow but reap not, that you bring in but not bring out, that you bring out but not bring in, that your home remain desolate, but your lodging place lived in, that your table be in turmoil, and you not behold a new year." When he came home to his father, he said to him, "Not only did they not bless me, they greatly upset me." His father asked, "What did they say to you?" They said thus and so. The father, those are all blessings. That you sow but reap not means that you beget children and they not die. That you bring in but not bring out means that you bring home daughters-in-law and your sons do not die, so that the wives would be obligated to go back to their father's home. That you bring out but not bring in. That means that you gave your daughters in marriage and their husbands do not die, so that your daughters are not obligated to come back to you. That your home be desolate, but your lodging place lived in. The world is the lodging place, and the grave is your home. That your table be in turmoil, because of many sons and daughters, and that you not behold a new year with a new wife, that your wife does not die, and you are not obliged to wed a new wife. Okay, we get a little better idea of the rabbi now. A man once said to his wife, "I vow that you are not to derive any benefit from me until you make Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon taste your cooking." Rabbi Yehuda consented to taste it, as he reasoned a fortiori, if, in order to make peace between husband and wife, Torah quotes God as saying, "My name, which is written in sanctity, is to be dissolved in the waters that curse," from Numbers 5:23. Even when it is doubtful whether or not the wife is guilty of adultery, how much less should I stand on my honor and refuse to taste the wife's cooking? But Rabbi Shimon refused to taste the cooking, exclaiming on the next page, "Even though the woman be widowed and her children die, Shimon will not budge from his position in order that people should not fall into the habit of vowing," which we are not supposed to do. In fact, on Yom Kippur, that's the first thing that we do in the Kol Nidre, is the annulment of vows. Okay, wherever Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai saw his mother engaged in long chit-chat on the Sabbath, he would say, "Mother, it is the Sabbath." Rabbi Shimon used to carry a basket on his shoulder, saying, "Great is labor, for it gives honor to the worker." A story about Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Shimon. Some donkey drivers, wishing to buy grain, came to his father's house where they saw Rabbi Eliezer seated near the oven from which his mother was taking out loaves of freshly baked bread. As she took them out, he kept eating them until he consumed all the troughs of bread. They said, "What a shame! A pernicious snake must have lodged in the young man's belly. He may well bring a famine upon the world." Rabbi Eliezer heard what they said, so when they went out to fetch their load, he took hold of their donkeys and hoisted them up onto the roof. When they returned, they looked for the donkeys but could not find them, until they raised their eyes and saw them on the roof. Chagrined, they went to his father and told him what had happened. He asked, "Perhaps you said something to offend him?" They replied, "No, sir, but this and this is what happened." Rabbi Shimon, "Why did you say something that might make him a victim of the evil eye? Was it perhaps your food he ate? Did you have to pay for his food? Did not he who created him also create food for him? Nevertheless, go and tell him in my name to fetch the donkeys down, and he will do so." They went and said to Rabbi Eliezer what his father had told them to say. The second feat was more striking than the first. In taking up the donkeys, Eliezer had hoisted them up one by one. In bringing them down, he carried them down two by two. However, once he began to study Torah, he could not even carry his own cloak. Okay. Let's see. Rabbi Shlomo says, also remember tonight's special counting of the Omer for Lag BaOmer, a special broadcast tonight when we will finish up here with the awesome teachings of. Okay. So, we'll make sure that we finish on time. As I know, we'll probably finish a few minutes early, give Rabbi Shlomo time to get his broadcast going so he's not late. Okay, so Rabbi Yosei ben Halafta saw Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and said, "You come from the stock of righteous men, yet you are not a student of Torah. Eliezer, what am I to do?" Rabbi Yosei, "Do you wish to study?" Eliezer, "Yes." So Rabbi Yosei began teaching him one chapter of Scripture, then a second, and then a third. Finally, he brought him down to the place where scholars assemble. When Rabbi Yehuda saw him, he asked Rabbi Yosei, "Did you have to bring such a one with you?" Rabbi Yosei, "He comes from the stock of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai." Later, Rabbi Yosei brought Eliezer up to Sepphoris, where he taught him Mishnah. The following year, he brought him down again to the place where scholars assembled. And Eliezer proceeded to respond to questions with proper answers. At this, The holy rabbi, Yehuda, applied to Eliezer the verse, "The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life," from Proverbs 11:30. Who caused Eliezer to become a student of Torah? Was it not Rabbi Yosef ben Halafta? Okay. Rabbi Eliezer ben Shimon became a porter. One time, Eliyahu Hanavi came to him disguised as an old man and said to him, "Get a beast of burden ready for me." Eliezer asked, "And what do you have to load on the animal?" Elijah replied, "This baggage, my cloak, and myself as rider." Eliezer said to the bystanders, "Look at this old man. I could load him on my back and carry him to the end of the world. Yet he says to me, 'Get a beast of burden ready for me.'" So he asked Eliyahu, "Do you insist on riding?" Eliyahu, "Yes." Then he put Eliyahu astride his own back and took him up mountainsides, down into valleys, and across fields of thorns. But Eliyahu began to bear down with his weight upon Eliezer. Finally, Eliezer said, old man, ride more lightly. If not, I shall throw you off." Then he asked Eliyahu, "Would you like to rest a bit?" Eliyahu replied, "Yes." What did Eliezer do next? He took Eliyahu to a field. He set him down under a tree and gave him something to eat and drink. After Eliyahu ate and drank, he asked Eliezer, "What will all this heavy labor get you? Would it not be better for you to take up a vocation, the vocation of your forebears?" Eliezer asked, "Will you teach me their vocation?" Eliyahu replied, "Yes." Then, according to some, Eliyahu taught Eliezer Torah for 13 years until he was able to recite the Sifra. So much of his strength went into learning that once he was able to recite the Sifra, he could not even carry his own cloak. Okay. While Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, another name we know well from the Talmud and also from our Mincha prayers, Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korah sat on benches. Rabbi Eliezer, son of Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Yehuda sat in front of them on the ground, raising questions and answering them. Finally, the other sages, also seated on the bench, said, "We drink the water, the learning of these two, yet they sit on the ground." Then seats were provided, and they were seated on them. But Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel protested, I have an only son among you, and you wish to make me lose him?" Rabbi Yehuda asked to get down from the bench. At that, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korah said, "Shall he who has a father live while he who has no father die?" So Rabbi Eliezer, son of Rabbi Shimon, also asked to get down from the bench. Not knowing why this was done, Rabbi Eliezer felt hurt, saying, "Do you regret Rabbi Yehuda? Do you regard Rabbi Yehuda as my equal?" Now, until this day, whenever Rabbi Yehuda made a statement, Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Shimon, would support him. But from then on, as soon as Rabbi Yehuda said, "I have an objection," objection, Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Shimon, would retort, "You should object thus and so. This should be your objection. Instead, you encompass us with bundles of objections that have no substance." Rabbi Yehuda felt humiliated and went off to complain to his father, who told him, "My son, do not take it to heart, for Eliezer is a lion, the son of a lion, whereas you are a lion, the son of a mere fox." Okay, there is so much more here, and I think we'll do it now. Wow, this is actually quite long. Yeah, actually, this is the last one. It's quite long. Let me see if I can get it done here. Okay, so this is the section 233. Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Shimon, once met a detective who was assigned to catch thieves. Rabbi Eliezer asked, "How do you recognize them? Are they not like wild beasts that prowl the night and hide during the day? Perhaps you sometimes arrest the innocent and leave the guilty free." The detective answered, "What shall I do? It is the king's command." Rabbi Eliezer, "Come, I will teach you what to do. At 9 o'clock in the morning, go to the tavern. Should you see a man dozing with a cup of wine in his hand, inquire about him. If he is a disciple of the wise, you may assume that he has risen early in the morning to pursue his studies, and that is why he is now dozing. If he is a laborer, he too must have been up early to do his work. But if neither, he is a thief. Arrest him." The report of this conversation was brought to the king's attention, and the decision was, as the proverb puts it, "Let the reader of the message become the messenger." Rabbi Eliezer, son of Rabbi Shimon, was accordingly sent for and was appointed to arrest thieves. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korah sent word of him, "O vinegar son of wine, how long will you deliver up the people of our God for slaughter?" Rabbi Eliezer sent back, "I weed out thorns from the vineyard." Rabbi Yehoshua replied, "Let the owner of the vineyard come and himself weed out its thorns." One day a mere fuller met him and called him vinegar son of wine. Rabbi Eliezer said to himself, "Since he is so insolent, he must surely be a felon." So he gave the order to his attendant, "Arrest him." And they arrested him. When Rabbi Eliezer's anger cooled, he went back in order to secure the fuller's release, but could not do so. Then he applied to himself the verse, "Whoso keepeth his mouth and his tongue keepeth his soul from troubles," from Proverbs 21:23. When they subsequently hanged the fuller, Rabbi Eliezer stood under the gallows and wept. His disciples said to him, "Master, do not grieve, for this fuller and his son together raped a betrothed maiden on Yom Kippur." At this, Rabbi Eliezer laid his hand on his belly and exclaimed, "Rejoice, my innards, rejoice. If matters you were in doubt fall out thus, how much more so matters which you are certain. I am well assured that neither worms nor decay will have power over you." Nevertheless, his conscience troubled him by the thought that he might have caused an innocent man's death and had no rest. So he was given a sleeping draught and taken into a marble chamber where his abdomen was opened. Out of it, baskets and baskets of fat were removed and placed in the sun during the summer months of Tammuz and Av. Yet the fat did not putrefy. Consequently, he applied to himself the verse, "My flesh too shall dwell in safely," from the Tehillim 16:9. Yet even so, Rabbi Eliezer, son of Rabbi Shimon, Shimon's countenance continued to trouble him. He therefore invoked painful afflictions upon himself, so that although 60 sheets were spread under him in the evening, 60 basins of blood and pus were removed from under him in the morning. Every morning his wife prepared a mixture of 60 kinds of fig pap for him, and when he ate it, he recovered. But his wife did not permit him to go out of the house of study, lest the sages who disapproved of his work as the thief catcher should cause him distress. In the evening, Rabbi Eliezer would invite his affliction back, saying, "Come back, my brethren and friends." And in the morning he would say to them, "Depart, lest you disturb my studies." One day his wife, overhearing him, cried out, "So it is of your own volition that you bring these afflictions upon yourself, and to pay for their treatment you squander the money of my father's house." With that thought, she went off to her father's house in defiance of her husband. Just then, 60 mariners were sailing on the sea. When a huge wave crested over them and was about to sink their vessel, they rose up in prayer, saying, "O God of Eliezer, answer us," and the sea's wrath abated. When the mariners reached dry land, they brought Rabbi Eliezer a gift of 60 slaves bearing 60 purses. The slaves prepared a mixture of 60 kinds of fig pap for him, and he ate it. One day, Rabbi Eliezer's wife said to her daughter, "Go and find out how your father is faring, how he is now." She went to him, and on her arrival, her father said to her, "Go tell your mother that our wealth is still greater than that of her father's house." He then applied to himself the verse from the Torah, "Torah is like the merchant ship fetching foodstuffs from afar," from Proverbs 31:14. He ate and recovered and went to the house of study. 60 specimens of blood were brought before him, and the question whether they were or were not menstrual blood, and he declared all the specimens clean, not blood from menstruation. But the sages criticized him, saying, "Is it possible that there were not even one specimen about which there might have been some doubt?" He responded, if it is as I have said, let the future children born of these women be males. If not, let there be one female among them." All the children were born males, and they were named Eliezer after him. In his last illness, Rabbi Eliezer's arm once happened to be exposed, and his wife both laughed and wept. She laughed because she said to herself, how happy am I, how happy my lot, that I have been able to cleave to the body of so righteous a man. She wept because she said, "Alas, the body of so righteous a man is destined for dust." As he was dying, he said to his wife, "I know that the sages are angry with me, and I will not properly attend to my burial. Let my body repose in the upper chamber, and do not be afraid of my presence there." Okay, we might make it. Rabbi Samuel ben Nachman said, Rabbi Yochanan, mother told me that the wife of Rabbi Eliezer's son, Rabbi Shimon, had told her He lay in the upper chamber not less than 18 or more, nor more than 22 years. Whenever I ascended there, I would examine his hair, and even if a single hair had fallen out, blood would spurt forth. On one day, when I saw a worm issue from his ear, I, fearful that his body had begun to decompose, was much grieved. But then he appeared to me in a dream and told me that to think nothing of it. This has happened, he said, because I once heard a disciple of the wise being belittled and did not protest as I should have done. Closing in on the end here. Whenever two people in a lawsuit came before him, they stood at the door. Each stated his case. Then the voice would issue from the upper chamber saying, so and so, you are liable, so and so, you are in the clear. One day, Rabbi Eliezer's wife was quarreling with a neighbor woman who cursed her. May you be like your husband who has had no proper burial. Consequently, the sages said, now that Rabbi Eliezer's being unburied has come to be known, it is not right to have it continue thus. Others say Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai appeared to the sages in a dream and said to them, I have a dear child among you whom you refuse to bring to me. Then the sages decided to attend to his burial, but the townspeople of the Akbera would not let them, because during all the years that Rabbi Eliezer, son of Rabbi Shimon, lay asleep in the upper chamber, no wild beasts had come to their town. However, one day, it was the eve of Yom Kippur, while the people of Akbera were preoccupied, the sages sent word to the townspeople of Biri, and they took his bier down and carried it to the cave where his father was buried. When they found a snake coiled at its entrance, they said to it, oh snake, open your mouth and let go of your tail, so that a son may join his father. At that, the snake opened its mouth, and they were able to enter. When Rabbi Eliezer, son of Rabbi Shimon, died, the generation applied to him the verse, who is this that cometh out of the wilderness like pillars of smoke perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all the powers of the merchant, from the Song of Songs. What did they mean with all the powers of the merchant? That he had rare powers, that he was master of scripture and Mishnah, and that he was a composer of hymns, and that he was a gifted preacher, and we made it. Okay, I want to thank everybody for being here. Don't forget to see Rabbi Shlomo's broadcast right after this. And with that, we are going to say, Laila Tov.